So before we jump in, I have to say that like one of my favorite moments in broadcasting or podcasting history was a couple of years ago when Terry Gross, the host of Fresh Air, decided to like flip the table and let somebody interview her for the first time after like 30, 40 years of doing it. It was Mark Maron, which is just perfect. After decades and decades of talking to like, world leaders and political influencers and the artists of our generation and whatnot, like she was still nobody had ever like interviewed her. So she was she was like, I'm so bad at being interviewed and just talking about myself. And then she would sort of keep going through it. So I'm very glad that you've decided to do this. I think that you are going to handle it so much better than poor Terry did.
Thanks. No, I've been super nervous about this all morning. I was like, I should cancel.
No. So, all right. So for those of you who've been watching these interviews with that Shannon has been hosting, a few weeks ago, she decided to let someone else take a shot at interviewing her. And I'm really glad that she did because she is always a treasure trove of knowledge and information. And as somebody who's worked with Shannon quite a bit, in various capacities, I know that she is absolutely one of those lieutenant captains that I want standing next to me as I'm trying to steer a ship around an iceberg, which is just about every tech process in the world. So Shannon, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
You should introduce yourself too.
Sorry, my name is Jake Penner. I worked with Shannon at Forward Theater for the most part, but we know each other from bouncing around various theater companies in and around Madison.
Yeah.
So first things first, and this is kind of a two-part question. I've been asking everybody lately. First, how are you? And second, how are you really?
Honestly, I'm pretty good. Which I feel super guilty about saying, like, it's like this weird sort of emotional survivor's guilt of like, no, we're not supposed to be doing okay right now. But I am, and I think that's because I've had projects like the interview project to really dig into and get to connect with people that I know and work with that never got to like talk to in the way that these have allowed. That's been super helpful. My partner and I are, I think like everybody's like, oh God, I have to like be around my partner all the time. We really like road tripping. Like we are at our best when we are in isolation together. So this ain't no thing. So I'm doing okay. And on the really, because I'm job searching now, and that's nerve-wracking in any scenario. But and I'm acutely aware of how weird my resume looks after 5 years of professional theater. And like I applied to a grocery store and they were like, oh, but you have cash handling experience in the last 3 years, right? And I was like, no, I don't.
Has it changed? Like what? I don't.
There's a lot more, like the questions that I've been seeing on applications and stuff have been a lot more like, we don't give a shit. I wasn't going to swear on this, but it's my show. I can do what I want. Yeah. We don't give a shit what you've done in the past. We want to know what you've been doing like in the immediate. And part of my brain is like, oh, but I can handle it. I can handle stocking a shelf. But, there's that initial hurdle, and half of my cover letters are like, look, I know that my resume is super weird, but, like, please just let me talk to you and show you that, like, no, theater makes really strong employees. Please just let me talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sorry that this is a frustrating experience. I'm as I said to you before in private, I'm like a month behind you in this. Yeah, I'm not. It sounds challenging right now, as you said, in any circumstance, but particularly right now. But one of the things that actually gives me hope is that a lot of us who do work in the industry, our industry is a bit on hold at the moment. So we're going to go out into the world and perhaps nudge that mindset along a little bit from employers in more traditional jobs of like, hey, people actually really know how to A, get shit done because we have to, and B, learn a new skill immediately because we have to. Right. We're dealing with that right now. And so, yeah, cash handling in 2020, no problem. Let me stock something. Let me do, But yeah, I get it. People are just unfamiliar with our kind, apparently.
They all think we're Doug's sister from the cartoon show Doug.
That's,
All we do is like play bongos and wear berets. And
sure.
that's my off time, damn it.
That's right. You don't have to answer for that. That's Shannon. All right, great. Well, great to hear that you're doing okay and not losing your mind amidst this. I feel like introverted types are doing okay right now, although I certainly cycle out of that okay now and again. But yeah, I think we're built for this. So okay, great. So let's talk a little bit about the industry, because I know that you and I have been working together for going on 6-7 years at this point, off and on. And you've sort of at times alluded to your pre-theater industry life working in bookstores, which I think is fascinating to me. It was something that I always wanted to do when they were around. So what was it that ultimately made you want to step into theater or the theater industry and try your hand at this? Was this a childhood aspiration, or was this something that came about later?
I mean, I started theater kind of. I danced, played a lot of musical instruments growing up. Did some theater. Music was really my forte, haha. Specifically singing, and I did a lot of opera, some professional gigs when I was a teenager. And I came to Madison to study vocal performance and do music education. I really wanted to do both of those things. And like a semester in, partly because of like personal tragedy and partly just because music school is scary.
Yeah.
And like I'm a pretty serious person. I take things seriously, perhaps too often. And music school took that to a degree that I was not prepared for. Like I remember distinctly a day in choir, like just like the lowest level choir, and looking around at all the people around me and realizing that they would like happily push me down some stairs if it meant that they had a better chance at a solo. And not because they're bad people or mean people, but like their drive was just so much more than mine was ever going to be.
Yeah.
So then I just kind of dicked around at UW for a few years. I was a film student. I came really close to getting degrees in English, English literature, specifically pre-Elizabethan British drama.
Okay.
And medieval history. And just before I was going to graduate, I realized that I didn't want to teach like at a high school level, which is all I really would have been equipped to do coming out with those degrees. And I wasn't ready for grad school yet. So like with a semester left, I left school and did a bunch of things, was the marketing manager for a gaming distributor. And yeah, eventually ended up working at Half Price Books. And after a few years in that, again, personal tragedy and nonsense, I was like, oh, I need change in my life. And I had been doing some community theater. I'd started to dabble in again, and I was directing. And I thought, okay, I finally know what I want to go to school for. I'll go back to school for theater and specifically directing. But like the real change that my life needed was to get out of an abusive marriage. So, which I realized a semester into going to theater school at UW. And yeah, so that was where that started. But again, that started with directing, and costuming happened by accident.
That's interesting. So when you had sort of dipped your toe back in at the directing side of the pool, what was the accident? What was it that ultimately pushed your focus in this new, I'm assuming a brand new direction for you, or had that happened?
Yeah. No, I mean, like, the signposts were there. If you look at my childhood and my crazy specific Halloween costumes that I made my mother make for me. Sorry, Mom. But no, the directing program kind of fell apart. It was about the same time that the acting and MFA program at UW went away. And there was kind of a vacuum of support for directing. And I still had a ways to go. So I was like, okay, I'll go into scenic design. That didn't gel with me at all. I kind of miss it sometimes. There's something really cool about scenic design, but it's not my jam. And during all of this, during the class that I'd kind of originally geared these interviews towards, called Theater 160 at UW, which is just an intro to technical design, or to technical theater, where you go around and you take a little bit of time in each of the disciplines. Jim Greco, the shop supervisor at UW, and I, not surprising to anyone now, really hit it off my first semester. He told a hilarious dirty joke that like that was the moment when I was like, yeah, Jim Greco, you're my people. And he kept saying to me, he's like, oh, I'm teaching this class next semester. Oh, you should really think about taking this class next semester just for fun, just to fill your time. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so I kept taking costume classes on the side, just never ever thinking that it was anything that I wanted to do. And then I got a call from Forward asking me to sub in on a show as a wardrobe supervisor. And then they called again. And then I worked for APT, American Players Theater, doing the same thing. And yeah, it just went from there. And then all of a sudden, costumes was my thing.
This sounds really familiar. Yeah, that's pretty much how it happens.
Yep.
What was the first Forward show, just out of curiosity?
The Other Place, starring Tracy Michelle Arnold.
Okay.
Yeah, with one of the craziest quick changes I've ever done.
Yeah.
Behind that wall that moved along the plaster line.
I remember that. Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that kind of answers my next question: is what was the entry point into the industry proper? But and Forward is certainly a great place to start. Was it? Do you remember how it was that they got your contact info? Had you just sent a resume and fingers crossed?
No, it was through Sarah Marty. I was taking her her business arts class at the time, and doing like resumes and stuff for that class. I had listed that I was the wardrobe supervisor for UT's production of Summer and Smoke. And so she passed my info along, and yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So 2 lessons there for any students. A, get to know Sarah Marty, and,
yep.
and B, in general, get to know everybody, because connections come in the least expected places most of the time.
Yeah.
Great. So as you've become this this kind of go-to designer in Madison for costumes, talk us through your process, from the moment that you get hired to do a show and they send you the script and you go, oh my God, I have to do what now? How far out do you start usually from production? And what is that initial sort of discussion that you're having with yourself in your own brain?
Oh man, so first I start by breaking all of the rules that I tell students to do of don't start working until you've got a contract. The second anybody's like, hey, would you ever think about doing Matilda? I remember saying point blank to Brian Cowan, no, I would not do Matilda. But then my brain was like, yeah, but what if I did Matilda? And so if there's source material, I'll read that first if I can before the script. Just so you can kind of see the genesis of the script a little bit better. And also to get into the pop cultural headspace that I think a lot of our audience members have now, of like, if there's a thing to know about a thing before you walk into the theater, they know it, or they know some part of it. And I think with costumes, it's really important to be sympathetic to people's previous experiences with a thing. So like with Carrie, which you and I worked on, that was reading the book, that was watching all of the movie versions. Right, like, and a little bit of the failed TV series. But just to see, because it's always pretty clear what those standout points are of what stays visually for people about those things. So yeah, if there's source material, take that in first. Pardon me. Then read the script. Then read it again. If there's music, listen to it as much as you can along with it. And then my favorite part is research. God, I love research, which is a good deal of dramaturgy, which is another reason why I kind of love costume work, because it's just so much of that history and putting together visuals, and finding the common language that you can talk to your team with.
Yep.
Because nobody knows what I'm saying if I came and I say, I think it's really important that Carrie has a Juliet sleeve and an Empire waistline. And I have my reasons for that, but that doesn't mean anything to you unless that's your usual vocabulary.
Right.
So getting the pictures together, organizing all of my notes, making lists of how many people there are, what they need, what kind of quick changes we're looking at, trying desperately to support wardrobe because I came out of wardrobe. So any way that I can make a show easier on the wardrobe team, I'm gonna. And hopefully arming myself with enough of that coming into a production meeting, my first production meeting, I'm not hitting a wall. There's this weird place in research I find where like you can know too much is a dangerous thing, right? You can get locked into your idea of like, no, this is how it has to be.
Yeah.
Or you can find enough stuff that no matter what the director says to you, there's something that you've put together in all of this that you're like, yep, I know exactly what that is. And that just like sets you down a little path in your own research rather than trying to like contort your own like cementally made ideas of what a show should be.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love what that you sort of said the key word there, dramaturgy for me, because I mean, I love working with dramaturgs, but typically when it's on a show where a dramaturg isn't it's been the best dramaturgs that I've been working with have been costume designers and set designers. I mean, really, they're the ones who give me that eye into the world from a different angle, you know. And having done the homework in dramaturgy and in, you know, story and in structure and in all of the things that we're trying to impart on the next generation while they're still training, it allows for you not to get into that concrete understanding of a story, you know, 6 months out, where you know you're going to have to shift and change based on all kinds of influences. And it's absolutely the director, but there's other people with their hands in the dough, and so you have to kind of shift and change and still have it all come together and coalesce into the story that works. So when you had done, because we had worked together on Mr. Burns, a post-electric play, when you were the dramaturg. That was actually the job. Was that a direction that you had been wanting to go in, or was that just a job that you were like, no, I can fill that hole for Mr. Burns because I know so much about this, or I'm so interested in doing this research, like you said?
A little bit of both. I think it was more the latter. Dramaturgy, I grew up in a really history-based family. We love history, so like that was always in the back of my mind of like, if I could find somewhere that would hire me and pay me money to do this, yes, please, that's the only thing I want to do. But as it happens, that's very few places are looking to hire that. And like you said, costume design and scenic design is so much of that anyway. But with Mr. Burns, I had only started working with Forward when they announced it. And I still remember like shrieking in the costume shop when they posted on Facebook the picture of the rake, like they were doing the little teases of the show. I was like, ah! Jim Greco was like, what the hell is wrong with you? I was like, they're doing Mr. Burns. So I went to Jen and was like, I don't know if you need somebody on your team, if you're looking for somebody, but I know so much about The Simpsons, and which, you know, in the end, you know, it came down very little to knowledge about The Simpsons, and it was so much more knowledge about that new world. But yeah, so in that instance, it was a forever interest in it, but in that moment, it was begging for a job that I was really enthusiastic about.
Got it. Like you said, it came down to so much about not understanding the Simpsons and more about that apocalypse scenario. But at the same time, like the fact that there were so many Simpsons nerds on that team made it so that, like, we could, even if you had never seen an episode, we were able to pull whatever essential out of The Simpsons that you needed to know in that. For example, the rake moment. Why is that funny? And how is that going to be funny now to somebody who's never seen that episode and doesn't know Homer and doesn't understand the way his brain works?
Or doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And it doesn't, like, it seemed like I think our team made that look easy, because a lot of research and a lot of understanding and a lot of conversation went into, why is The Simpsons funny? Like, let's break it down and figure out what is memorable about this episode in particular. And so the audience didn't have to worry about that. So can you talk us through, and I want to hear about what your typical day working on a show in the professional theater is like, but I'm also very curious to hear what your typical day is like when you're working in an educational setting like the UW-Madison, where you're having to fill two roles here, right? You're having to be the professional designer. You're also having to be a bit of a mentor to a team of young people who are brand new at this.
Yeah, I think it's, there's always the to-do list when you're working on a show, regardless of the capacity you're working on it in. So there's always the to-do list of, here's what I have to get done now. Be that getting garments ready for fittings or doing fittings. But I think there's, one of the things I love about educational theater is that there's an openness about process that I think we kind of lose touch with in professional theater. I think there's so many more opportunities to talk about, like, the why we do something and how we're doing it. And instead of, like, the beauty and the curse of professional theater, where I'm just going to trust you to go do the thing.
Yeah.
And there are marked points when I will see where you're at with the thing. But for the most part, I trust you, get out of here, go do the thing.
Yeah.
And with educational theater, it invites a conversation at all times about, hey, here's what I'm about to do. Do you have any interest in learning this thing? Or one of my favorite parts about educational theater too is, and well, in theater in general, is getting to check in with actors in fittings. And, like, that's so much a part of my process now of, like, not just, hey, does this fit? Does it do what you need it to do? Can you do the splits? Can you, do an effective death scene? Whatever it is. But, like, how is the process going? What are you learning? Where are you at? Are you enjoying this? All of that. And, like, keeping that open for myself as a sounding board. I learned a lot about the production that way. So much. But in terms of students, I think it's just so helpful that we have moments to check in on their learning process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because even the most seasoned student actors, they're still students. And you can make an argument of that for professional anythings. But finding those moments, having just open shop time in the afternoon outside of fittings, where I'm really proud of Jim Greco and myself for having an atmosphere in the shop that people can stop by, whether or not they're there for class or fittings, or even if they're not costume students, doesn't matter. Stop by, tell us what's going on.
Yeah.
And ask us questions too, because it's a whole other world that most people don't know anything about. And yeah, that openness, I think, is the biggest difference.
That's wonderful to hear. And now that you're describing it this way, I think that naturally would go to your department, because you've got some space to do it, right? You literally have 15 minutes with this actor to talk with them and check in with them. How are you doing? How are you actually doing, right?
Yep.
But then also, I have this rule anytime I walk into a first production meeting now, where I've said this out loud to just about every team I've worked with in that first meeting as a director, where I say, listen, there's 6 people around the table right now. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, any one of you could jump in and direct this play. If one of you went down, I could not jump into your role and fill that role. So let's just get this out of the way and acknowledge this right now. You all are storytellers too. I'm taking your input, and it's all filtering through me, but most of it's getting up there in one way or another. So to have somebody that a student or a professional actor who's been doing this for years and years can go to and unload and say, I don't know, I don't understand what the hell this director wants me to do in this moment. What do you, and then you probably have an opinion about how you might be able to achieve that. Or it can at least help them talk it through. It's such an important role to have that sounding board, you know, because you don't always, I mean, sometimes the process doesn't really have room for that.
Oh yeah, there are moments in theater. I'm still shocked by how isolating this business can be.
Yeah.
For a collaborative art, it can be incredibly isolating. So anytime that we have those chances to check in with each other, I relish that.
Absolutely. Well, that's great. I'm glad you guys are doing that, and you and Jim are specifically in that department able to do that. I didn't really have that. I didn't know Jim when I was a student at the UW. I was getting thrown in with all of the MFA students most of the time, and I didn't really know them. They didn't really know me, so it was a very lonely couple of years. But yeah, no, it's good to hear that you guys have been providing that for people. That's going to be really valuable for them. Okay. We'll get a little esoteric right now. And you may have just answered this question actually, but what is it that you wish that people, whether they're working in theater or in other aspects of the profession, knew about the job that you do as designer?
Oh man, I think you actually just answered this. We're storytellers too. I will never say that we are irreplaceable in the process. One of my favorite things, Jim starts his costume lecture with what's the most important element in theater? And kids always roll their eyes and they're like, oh, you're going to say costumes. And he's like, no, it's the actors. Theater doesn't need us. That being said, all designers bring something to the table, like you just said, that we are specifically vested and informed on. And with costumes in particular, I think we often become the throwaway department because, especially with contemporary design, it's really easy to say like, oh, well, it's just clothes, which is, ask any costume designer, it's their least favorite phrase in the universe. But it's tough and it's not simple. And we're doing our best to support everyone else with our little bits of knowledge and stuff. And we're storytellers too.
Absolutely. In this moment right now that we're in, that hopefully we're not going to be in for too much longer, where everybody is trying to transition a production or a reading or something to this medium that we're in, this sort of in-between thing.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of this lately, and the first two people I really miss having on a team is a costume designer and a lighting designer. Because this medium, maybe some of your students have been trying to do this lately, where you're trying to put something on Zoom or on Meet or on Skype. It's such a fine line to have to walk from a design perspective for a character. Like if they're in full production garb, it's gonna look a little weird when their kitchen is behind them, right?
Right.
And yet at the same time, you have to design something that, though it might not embody this character, it has to at least gesture toward this character or evoke this character. And it has to look like something that Tracy Arnold would wear. You know what I mean? Like it has to be them and not them. And it's such a
fine line. It's tough.
To say nothing of a lighting designer who I'd be like, can you just make it, do it? I don't care what you do, just do it. So I think that I feel like we've gone down this weird road in the last couple of weeks with a few key pieces of public communications from companies that have sort of turned the spotlight down on designers, and that's been bothering me a little bit lately, because if I had to do a show on a bare stage right now, I would be holding my designers even closer, because now now we have to do so much with so little. I can't do that. And the actors don't have time to do that. Like, we need an outside eye who can develop a world with a gesture.
Right. Well, and the whole idea is that you should never have to do all of those things. Right. The actors should never have to.
Right.
It's all about sharing the burden. And boy, do I hear you on we're seeing so much content from theaters. So much. And I'm kind of shocked at who's getting left behind on those.
Yeah, me too.
And that's part of why I've decided, partly thanks to you and a few other people, to keep going with these interviews, but do them in a public way, because I'm so interested in hearing from the people who make theater, and to not necessarily have it framed as like a marketing device but yeah, I want to hear from everyone. And I think I get this notion from a few artistic directors, not all, but a few, that designers can't talk to people. That like designers and technicians are like backstage because we don't do that. And I don't love the spotlight, but I also recognize that being able to talk to people and being visible as a designer, as a technician, is super important, because that's how we get invested, right? That's how we connect to people, by being people. And so we help our audiences understand the process and how many people are involved and all of it, if they get to see everyone involved. There's a big difference between being unseen backstage when we're not supposed to be seen, and being invisible to our colleagues. And you know me, that's my soapbox. I could talk about that all day, but I hope that we see more theaters, as they're looking for content, that they talk to everyone who helps make their productions.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope that you get on that soapbox and stay there for a little while right now, because I think that you've always been the outspoken one that I've known who's worked in the industry, who's a part of that age range that you and I are in, this very odd age range that we're in this industry, where it's like, we're, and I guess it's other industries too. We have this weird sort of millennial curse on us, and that we were let in the door early, but told to like stay by the foyer for a while.
Right, like the elder millennial thing of like, we still have all of the burdens of being millennials, but for some reason we're expected to have all of the same advantages and mindsets of previous generations, and we just don't. Every now and then when I hear when I get an argument from a company that's like, well, don't you have insurance from your husband?
Oh my God.
Right? Or like I'll hear that from other costume technicians and designers, and they're like, well, I'm okay on insurance because my husband.
Yeah, that sounds nice. That sounds really great right now.
Fabulous. I'm so happy for you.
Okay.
Is he taking applications, your husband?
Yeah, absolutely. We can undo this. What is it called? We can do polygamy, I think, just for the health insurance at this point. I'm willing to entertain it. So that's great, Shannon. I would love to keep talking about this and only this, and how you're going to spin this into a more public forum, because I think this is absolutely the time to be doing it. I think it's so important right now. But I do want to keep talking about your journey, because I think that this has been really great to hear. We've kind of gotten, this is such a hard question for me. I remember when you asked me this question, I was like, I have many, but can you think of a favorite production from your career?
There's a couple, and I'm gonna take the same grace that I granted other people. Mr. Burns will always be up there. That was a script I'd been dying to work with, and that team was.
Yeah.
Sorry to all other Mr. Burns productions out there, but ours was dope as hell. We had Michael Harold. Everyone else can shut up. But yeah, that top to bottom was a wonderful show. Doing Matilda recently with Children's Theater of Madison. I walk on hot coals for Brian Cowan, so even though I was super against working on that show on that scale, I did it, and I'm so glad I did because I grew 5 sizes that day as a designer. My work came so far on that little show. Evil Dead was a hoot because that was another bucket list show.
Yeah.
And yeah, you'll never get to have the kind of conversations on a show that I got to have on Evil Dead musical. That being said, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Yeah. Like, I would have a hard time leaving that cast behind because they were something special, but yeah, I'll do that one over and over again.
Cool. What's like another bucket list show for you haven't done yet?
Oh man. I would love to work on Anyone Can Whistle.
Oh, I don't know
in any capacity. It's a Stephen Sondheim, and it never gets done for good reason, because it's kind of broken. But that one I'd actually like to perform in. Honestly, if I ever came back to the stage, it would be for that one. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Anyone Can Whistle, it's about a corrupt mayoress, which is a fabulous role for a middle-aged woman.
Yeah.
Who creates a fake miracle in her town to try and save it. She creates a healing spring from a rock, and the nearby mental asylum brings all of their inhabitants to the rock to be cured, and then they all escape. And that's the show. The rest of the show is trying to sort that out. It's right, and it's one of those shows that in the right hands could be excellent. And on the same vein, Stephen Sondheim, Merrily We Roll Along, which is his most beautiful score, but it is impossible to put on. And that's why they're taking 30 years with Ben Platt and Beanie Feldstein to do it the only way you really can, which is in real time.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna look. I'm absolutely looking this one up. Anyone Can Whistle. Sounds good.
Yeah.
So what do you? All right. So I know that we've had this discussion before. Ours is an industry in which it's very difficult to get any real time off. It was sort of built into the foundation. The unions say you only need the one day off, and that's if you're in that period of rehearsal. If you're in the other period, you don't get any time off. So. So with that in mind, what do you do to step away from this job and turn your brain off and recharge?
I'm a huge nerd, so I play Dungeons and Dragons whenever and wherever I can. I'm still adapting. I'm a Luddite at heart, so I'm still adapting to the copious amounts of technology that people have put together to make it possible to do those kind of things. Far apart, I'm still struggling, but grateful to be in a couple groups right now. As part of that, I paint miniatures. Here's a bear.
Oh, nice.
I find a lot of solace in painting tiny details that are ultimately meaningless. No one gives a shit how well I paint that bear, whereas opposed to trying to deliver something with that much detail to production, 2 entirely different stress levels. I hike, I bake. I've got a garden going now that we've got a house, which I'm kind of in love with. Yeah, lots of introvert activities.
I think that's necessary when you're in a room with 25 people during tech. After a week, it's like, oh, I gotta be alone for a while.
Oh my God, and being an empath in costumes and trying to, to keep spirits up and even when everything's on fire, being like, oh no, we got this. It's great.
Yeah, that's tough. It's really tough to set that aside and just get the job done, because you do want to take care of everybody some days, but it's hard. It's hard. It's a tough negotiation with yourself.
Yeah.
Which is why I think it's so important to get away. People should learn how to get away when they can.
Oh my God, yes. Learn those priorities
Yeah.
before you're forced to choose to make priorities.
Yeah. Or after it's too late already, or
Yeah.
before, okay. Oh, this is a great one. So what do you wish for the future of our industry?
The easy answer is that I just want it to come back.
Yeah.
But that actually kind of freaks me out with our industry. We are so prone to nostalgia
Yeah.
that there are a lot of ways in which our industry, much like our country right now, I think we're seeing just how broken it is and how inequitable it is. And I hope that we take this opportunity to do a bit of a hard reset on how we approach our industry. And, maybe now, for so long, the fight against like looking at a 5-day work week for theater, right? Well, how do we transition to that? We're not transitioning from anything right now, so let's look at that.
Yeah.
And finding equitable pay for our technicians, for the love of God. I'm so proud of theater and how far most theater, not all theater, most theater, how far we've come with diversity on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Which honestly, like at first I was like, yay, that's awesome. But it's been going on to such a degree and with such a hard break between the diversity we see on stage and the complete lack of diversity backstage that it kind of starts to feel like tokenism to me. And I hate that. So finding ways to find the money to pay people backstage so that you don't have to come from money to be able to do this industry, right? That you can start from the bottom without a significant amount of money in the bank, that you can have an entry-level position in theater as much as you'd have an entry-level position anywhere else. So that we can see real diverse change across the board. Those are the big ones. And I think kind of circling back to what we were talking about earlier, just making sure that we see all of our colleagues, and that kind of goes along with equity, but that we get rid of the kind of classist nonsense that we love to pretend doesn't exist.
Sure.
In theater. It's funny, I go through stages of when I first started working professionally, I was like, there's no like we and they versus performers and non-performers. And then there are times I'm like, no, there absolutely is. And again, not everyone. There are people who are really, really awesome about that and companies that are really awesome about that. But it's not far-reaching enough yet. Where we are all just colleagues.
Yeah.
who are valued by our companies.
Yeah, this is definitely still something that we need to address, and I'm hoping, like you said, that a period away might inspire people to get a little bit on board with this idea, because it's been certain companies, like you said, have been dragging their feet. I wonder if that's going to be the case when we emerge from this eventually, though. I hope we'll do better. And it's ironic too that like you have to come from money to get your foot in the door in the industry, that 100 to 400 years ago, like this was for poor people who couldn't do anything else, right? I mean, this really was the way that you got a part of a company and you apprenticed and you traveled around the countryside putting on shows. I mean, it's this weird thing that happened over the course of history where you have to be privileged, it seems, to do this. And yeah, it's hard. It's very, very hard to get an apprenticeship or an internship somewhere and be told that you're actually going to get charged to be there.
Right. Like, please. Or my favorite story that I've heard from multiple people at multiple companies is doing an apprenticeship and on your first day being taught how to sign up for food stamps.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. unimaginable shit. Like, I don't know how anyone does that with a straight face.
Right, that anyone can be like, oh, and today we're going to teach you about food stamps, which is a totally normal part of your industry. Get ready for poverty. Like,
yeah, it's really tough. Okay. Yeah. I think we're poised to make a leap in this regard. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
Along those lines, what do you wish somebody would have taken you aside mid-show and been like, listen, kid, here's how this is going to go when you were first starting out? What do you wish somebody had told you?
Oh, man, you know what's stupid? Someone did tell me this, and I just didn't listen. So so I will say, what I wish someone would have told me when I had ears to listen, or humility enough to listen. Shout out to Jim Greco, who literally took me aside and was like, for the love of God, learn how to say no. And it's tough. It's so tough. I get it. I 100% get it, especially when you're starting out. You want to say yes to everything because every invitation to the table in theater still feels like one of those silly, like over the top prom invites that I see the kids do on the internet now. Right, where it's like every single time someone's like, hey, come do a show, it feels like someone's showing up to your door with roses and balloons and like a giant check that cost way more than the amount of money that's on the check.
Yeah.
And it feels so good to be asked, and it feels so good to say yes. But no is a muscle, and you gotta practice it. You gotta flex it as often as you can. And this goes back to figuring out your priorities before you don't have any choices. You know, there are going to be times when you're going to be offered a really cool gig, but it's the weekend, you're going to be in tech the weekend of your brother's wedding. Or that, you know, that's kind of the most common thing I hear is that like, oh man, I had to turn this down because of a family's wedding, or I'm missing somebody's wedding because I have to work. And sometimes those are easy choices and sometimes they really aren't, but you have to know when you have to say no. And you have to learn when your work-life balance is wildly out of control. And yeah, just learn how to say it. And the more we do it too, because I think there's also this notion that if we say no, we're ungrateful, or somebody else is going to get it, or nobody's ever going to ask us again. But if we all learn how to do it, if we make it okay in our industry to say no to things, I think we're all going to just be helping each other out.
Yeah.
And again, I 100% get it, and I'm still not great at it because it feels real good. It feels real good to get that ask to the dance.
Yep.
But there are more important things in life. Hear me when I say this. There are more important things in life than your job.
Yeah. And I will add to that and say that it's actually really important that you experience enough of life to be able to do the job well, because, all we're doing is reflecting the world as it actually is back onto stage or through camera or however you do it. And in my early experiences in music school, which Whiplash got it right. It is actually kind of like that. You come across a young prodigy or a young genius, and it is intimidating to say the least. But the more you get to see their work and the more you get to know them, the more you understand that there is something fundamentally missing from a person who's been locked in a tiny practice room for 10 hours a day since they were 5.
Yep.
And you do have to figure out where balance, that work-life balance that's not just like an in the clouds nice thing to say. It's essential to do the job. You have to do the job. You have to have that in order to be an artist, right?
Yep.
Because you got to be taking in input as much as possible. Great. So we have a little bit of time left, and I want to go through, because one of my great heroes was interest in the recent in the last few months, James Lipton of the Actors Studio. Somebody who I will, if that character ever came across my field of vision, I would come out of retirement as an actor to play him because he.
Oh man, I'd love to see you as James Lipton. We could do a young James Lipton for you now.
What I want to do, I'm going to do it right now. But what I want to do is eventually, like when they do when they do the Arrested Development movie, like the making of the show, I want to be Lipton being Lipton, Lipton being the warden being Lipton. That's the pinnacle of that's my Hamlet actually. So let's dip into some Lipton. All right.
Cool.
That we've got. What is your favorite word?
It's a tie between cantankerous, 2K sounds, comedy gold, and defenestrate, which is just the most specific word in the English language, and I love it.
What does it mean?
To throw out a window.
Jesus Christ. Great. That's great. All right. How about this? What is your least favorite word?
Cover your ears at home if you're easily offended. Cunt. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's just on a just sound, just a phonology level. It's just an ugly sounding word. What turns you on?
Collaboration. Yeah. Like real, true collaboration.
How about what turns you off?
Selfishness, thoughtlessness.
Right. What sound or noise do you love?
My partner is it's like living with the world's sweetest grizzly bear. I actually reference him as being like Ben, the Simpsons character, the talk show bear who has like the microphone on his head. Ben he's not a dramatic human at all, but his yawns and his like rolling over in his sleep are the most dramatic bear-like groans in the world. And I love them so much.
Fantastic. All right, so let's see if this is the same answer. What sound or noise do you hate?
Ooh, feedback, like sound feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you catch Pen 15 on Hulu?
Yes, I finally watched it.
The episode where it's all AOL Instant Messenger, and the episode starts, the teaser starts with that sound that we all forgot but can never actually forget of the modem.
I know. Young ones, you have no idea how easy you have it just from that. And like, do you remember accidentally picking up the phone when you didn't know somebody was logged on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, feedback sucks. Here we go. Violating your one rule for today. What is your favorite curse word?
God damn it.
There you go. Love it. That needs no explanation. Like there's actually, because yeah, it does. So why do you love God damn it? What is it about that?
I think there's excellent rhythm to it. God damn it. Yeah, I think the meter of God damn it is fabulous. And then it was verboten. It was like extra verboten because I grew up super Catholic. Uh-huh. And so, yeah, so that was a no-no. Fuck was way more acceptable than God damn it.
Right. God damn it is a rhythmic taking of the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would love to just be a student, honestly, for the rest of my days. I know that's not really a profession. I'm kind of cheating, but yeah, I would just like to learn just all the things.
I'm friends with quite a few professors. They would argue with you. It is absolutely a profession. And they're great people, and they know all kinds of shit that you don't know.
It's true.
They drink great. Like those are great conversations.
Nobody drinks better than them.
Really? I mean, yeah, it's actually part of the job. They need to, discuss things, and that's a good facilitator for them. What profession would you not like to do?
Oh God, anything medical, maybe especially with animals, but anything that has to do with suffering, I can't do it.
Yeah, that is a tough one for an empath. And certainly, I've been thinking a lot about this actually in the moment that we're in, how difficult that.
Oh my God, right? Like at the amount that I cry at like the stories that nurses are sharing on Facebook.
Yeah.
no way could I be effective in that job.
Truly some superhuman stuff happening out of that job right now. And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear said to you when you arrive?
I saw how hard you tried, and you don't need to try anymore.
Beautiful. Shannon Heibler, this was a real pleasure. We should do this every morning.
What a good start to our day. Thanks, Jake.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thanks to people who are watching and listening. And hold Shannon to this. Make her do this more and more, because these are.
Yeah, please. Please, it's going to be a thing. You'll see an announcement coming. And please, somebody help me come up with a name for this frickin' thing. I don't. My therapist says it has to have my name in it. I don't think that that's a rule we have to follow, but like, just help me come up with something clever.
I kind of like Chat Thing. People can't see that it's called Chat Thing.
It's Chat Thing in the invite, yeah.
It's Chat Thing, the musical.
Boom.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. I gotta run to the next thing.
Yes, please.
Great to see you. Love
Good to see you too. Take care.
See you all soon, hopefully.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.